Okay. Bill is trying to get, yeah, because the link both of us had. Okay, wait, let's see. 6 people view. Okay, admit, 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 admit. Okay, I think I got them all.
Good job, Andy. Good job.
Sorry. Okay, I think we're good. Thank you. Bye. Hi, yay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I was trying to find the link and the other one I had wasn't working. So I was like, okay, let me start over.
I know. I didn't even think to check in on that today. Apologies. Okay.
I'm here.
Hi, Bill. Thank you.
Yeah, I had I didn't know if I had a bad link or not.
Yeah.
So, anyway. Okay.
It was me.
Yeah, someone has to take the blame. Thanks.
Yeah, that's why you get the big bucks, Sandy.
Right. Yeah. I don't know. It's this little administrative stuff that I struggle with because we don't use Zoom that much. We're Microsoft Teams now. So it's a little different. But anyway.
Do you have the agenda to put on the screen, or I mean,
what do you want me to put on the screen? That's what I wasn't sure.
The agenda? Oh, just to start us off. Yeah.
I'm traveling, so my internet is real in and out. So I will do my best. Let me see if I put the agenda.
Can I please suggest that if your internet is wavering, can you please assign the host responsibilities to someone else just in case you drop? It doesn't end it for everyone.
Yeah, hang on a second. Let me get back there.
Thank you.
Hang on one second. Okay. Well, shoot. Where is that? Because this looks really weird to me. I don't see.
I mean, I can share, if I can share my screen, I can share it.
Let me see.
No, it says
it's not letting me.
So down at the bottom of Zoom, there should be a shield there that says security. If you click that, you can enable screen sharing.
Okay, hold on. That's where I'm at. It's okay.
Or you can click the little caret next to share screen and it says multiple participants, allow multiple participants to share.
Oh, share screen. Here we go. Okay. Share screen.
It's a big joke. ...
Okay, got it. Got that one.
Great.
Okay, here we go.
Andy is somewhere else traveling. So her
I'm
link
sorry,
isn't
Carol,
stable.
did you have something that you needed to state, Carol?
I think, Carol, could you mute yourself, please?
Okay, I got it all. There we go. It keeps giving me a message.
Here is the agenda. Shall we start with homeowner comments and questions before we jump right into Bill's discussion?
Do you have any?
I don't see anything in the chat.
I have a question.
Okay, Carol.
Carol, go ahead.
Thank you. A question for our visitor. Have you done audits in the last 5 years?
I don't mean to be humorous. We've done audits 10 minutes ago.
And so you're aware that there are multiple kinds of audits?
Maybe the
Our
best,
only clientele are homeowners associations, and those are the kind of clients that we perform audits or reviews for.
Carol, how about let's give Bill a chance to speak and then.
Perfect.
Okay, great. Okay, Bill,
Mhm.
thank you so much for joining us today.
Sure.
Welcome everybody to the Finance Committee meeting. And I think, as you could tell from Carol's question, people are really interested in audits and reviews, what the
Good.
is, and you know, what you could recommend to us as best practices.
Sure. I guess it sounds like maybe I'll give a brief overview of our firm. Our only clientele are homeowners associations, and we have somewhere about 2,500 to 3,000 homeowner association clients. Unfortunately, most of them, like yourself, have December year ends. So we have what's called in HOA in CPA land, sorry, is workload compression. So we're very extremely busy through the April 30th deadline. You're aware of that April 30th deadline. So we do maybe at least 200 or so audits of associations of varying sizes. Some of them, well, I could get back to why. I think that's one of the questions as to why some associations have audits and others don't. One reason is if the governing documents require an audit, then they have one done regardless. Others could be because there's a bank loan and the bank requires it. I'm looking for reasons that it's mandated somewhere. Those are when it's mandated. Otherwise, this is it's just a rough guess, a rough guideline. The size of the association has something to do with it. The larger associations will be more inclined to have an audit, maybe because they're inclined, they can afford it. But we'll talk about the costs later. They could afford it, but these are the larger associations more likely would have an audit rather than a smaller association. And larger, there's lots of gauges on larger. One could be the number of units. One could be on the amount of cash or assets that the association has. And lastly, it would be on the kinds of activities that the association has. By activities, I mean activity other than collecting assessments. If you have significant recreational or other kinds of amenities that generate a lot of money for the association, then there's more likelihood of an audit done than not. So, any questions so far? Okay, let me say where your association falls in this, and you meet some of the tests, some of it. You're a larger association. You get 590 units, and you have a lot of assets compared with associations your size, about 11, $12 million. So on the large to small size, you're on the larger side. Then when you look at your revenue side, you're almost entirely driven by your assessments. You don't really have amenities that generate substantial income for the association. So you're in a gray area. Do you have an audit or not? And if your governing documents are silent about it, then now I understand there's some controversy there. But the CPA firm that preceded us also did reviews of the association. I don't know how far back this goes, but you know, right now we've done reviews for a number of years, and the prior CPA did reviews, looks like since 2018. So you've had reviews done. If there's I would say there's other reasons for having audits. I left them out. If you could be undertaking a major project, a reconstruction project, where lots of money is being spent, lots of work is going on, that might be another reason to have an audit rather than a review. Another reason is, and Andy, nothing, it's not personal, but something when there's a change in management, many times when there's a management change, the association wants to have, or at least the new management company would like to have an audit done. So like I've touched on the reasons for audits. If there's a belief that there's something bad going on where you think a vendor was paid incorrectly or something like that, that's a whole different kind of engagement. That would not be an audit. So and it sounds like that's certainly not what's taking place at Nepenthe. If I count this right, it's Nepenthe.
Yeah,
Yes.
that's right.
Thank you, Nepenthe.
Can I just interrupt for 1 second? Andy?
Please, go ahead.
This is just a separate housekeeping thing. Andy, I think there might be some people in the waiting room. Can you let them in? And I don't have to have this
Yeah.
agenda up on here, especially if you've got anything that you want to share, Bill.
Probably not.
Okay, all right. Okay, sorry, go ahead.
So I think.
I guess you were going to finish saying if there were other reasons people wanted to have audits. I want to make sure that you talk about what the differences are like between audits and reviews, just so everyone is really clear.
Well, the term audit in the kind of world where we are, it is only an audit or an expression of an opinion on the financial statements as a whole. That's all it is. We call them agreed upon procedures if we do other kinds of work. An example would be, this has nothing to do with Nepenthe. There's an example would be, there's a belief that some vendor has been overpaid or was not paid correctly. So we would look at all payments to this vendor for a certain period of time and something like that. That's not an audit. We call that an agreed upon procedures engagement. So the word audit is used a lot by others in many different ways. For instance, they call, if the tax authorities want to take a look at the tax returns of an entity or taxpayer, that's often called an audit. So the word is used lots of different ways, but in the sense that I'm speaking about, it's only an expression on the financial statements taken as a whole, whether there's any modifications in the financials as presented. We hope that there aren't any.
Modifications, can you elaborate on that? What do you mean by modifications?
You don't want to, you
complicated?
would never like to see a report like that. That would mean that it's not fairly presented. There's something that we disagree with, and it's material. That I have to think about ever seeing a report like that. There has been in the thousands of reports done. I've only had one, and rather that we lost the client, and it was worth it. So that sounds self-serving, but you just don't see it very often. Thank goodness. So if there's questions about a
Do you
report,
want to talk about
sure.
what's a review? What's involved in a review that's different from an audit?
Let's just say first what an audit is, and then I can tell you what the review doesn't do.
Okay,
All right. Otherwise they're similar, they're identical. So as part of the audit, we make an evaluation of management, whoever does the monthly accounting, their system of internal control, just for the purposes of our understanding of goings of the accounting. It's not an expression on the internal control as a whole, but just so that we can gain an understanding of how things work. That's all. So we gain an understanding of internal accounting control. We look at certain paid bills to see if they're paid in accordance with the board's authority and author and so forth. Now, if you had significant revenue generating activity, we'd also look at that as well. We would do a test of of certain transactions and receipts or revenues. If you had material fixed assets, meaning that they're on the balance sheet, but you don't. If you did, we would also look at that as well. The review doesn't do any of that. The review, the similarities we with an audit is we do analytic review, meaning that we look at fluctuations, we do comparisons to budgets based upon our internal evaluation of materiality. So that's the difference between the audit and review. The financials look identical. It's just the report that's different. The audit report's the audit report, and there's a review report, which is the report that you currently see. We do not do anything more or less between review and audit with the presentation of your major components. We present what somebody else did. That's not our expertise. All we're required to do is present. We do not evaluate. That's why you hired was Browning, and they did the reserve study, and then you relied upon that, and that's what's presented. We're required to present. We present that in our financial statements. Let me see. The question might come up about the bank statements. If you do bank confirmations, for example, or do you confirm assessments receivable? And the answer to them is generally no. There's nothing much to be gained by a bank confirmation that we could not ordinarily obtain from the year-end bank statement. If we're unable to get a year-end bank statement for numbers of reasons, then we may have to resort to a bank confirmation. On the whole, though, banks never complete them the way they're supposed to. So it's very unproductive. And as far as confirmation of accounts receivable, assessments receivable, generally that's not done either. That's just not a typical procedure that's done with assessments receivable for homeowners associations. The aging agrees to the financial statements, and the board looks at the aging each month, and everyone knows, everybody's billed knows what their bill is. It's the same each month. So there's not much to be gained by the confirmation of assessments receivable. So I see there's a question in the chat. I don't know if I should look at that or not.
You should.
That's probably me. I'm just monitoring the waiting room.
I see.
It's just me monitoring the waiting
Oh,
room. I don't
I
see
see.
anything
Okay,
else.
great. Okay.
You're good. No questions in the chat yet. I've been looking.
Okay. All right. Then I guess now the drum roll is everyone wants to know how much it's going to cost for an audit. Maybe I'd ask those present, what would you, I'm going to turn it around because I want to know what in anyone's mind do they think, how an audit would cost. I could, before I tell you, and it's not gonna, what you tell me isn't gonna change a darn thing. I just like to know what is in your minds, frankly, because maybe it's not as expensive as you envision. That's all. Somebody like to tell me what their thoughts are.
Of course not.
No, oh, who said of course not?
As I said, it's not going to change. If you told me, if you said $50,000, man, my goodness, we don't have any clients like that. No, and it's somewhere between $4,000 to $6,000.
For an
I just
audit?
wanted to know what in your mind, because I mean, it's not my money, it's your money, how you're spending on it. And to me, sometimes it sounds like, it's not that great of a difference. But I understand it's your money and how you want to spend it. But,
And this is for an audit or a review?
the review, including the tax return, was, correct me if I'm wrong, Andy, I believe it was $2,000. So for the audit, including the tax return, probably somewhere between $4,000 to $6,000. Unless it could change, given if your situation changes.
I'm not
Yes.
100% sure. I can look at the financials and see if I can find it, but that sounds about right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It looks like Carol has a question.
Is it Carol or Peter? I see Peter.
Carol, do you want to unmute yourself? It says, Carol, due to you, question.
Oh, well, Peter has his hand
Yeah.
raised. Ruth.
Yes, thank you, Andy. So Bill,
Mm-hmm.
what if the HOA wanted to do a specific engagement,
I'm sorry, I had some
Looking at
difficulty hearing you.
processes and workflow through
Carol,
a
you're-
specific expense area that happens to be one of our highest?
I'm sorry, Carol, the transmission or your connection there wasn't that good, and I couldn't hear everything that you said. I'm sorry, if you were able to repeat that, please.
I'm not hearing you. Did you hear me?
Not very well. Is there?
Do you want to type your question in?
I think what Carol is wanting to know is how much that
See a message that I'm cutting out.
the specific engagement that you were speaking of before. I think,
Can you hear me now?
oh, Carol, go ahead. Sorry, I was trying to speak for you, but you sound better now. Go ahead.
Hello?
Go ahead.
Yep. Why don't we just move to Peter, and then maybe Carol can type her question in the chat. Peter, go
Okay,
ahead.
so maybe you couldn't hear me. My question was, what if the HOA wanted a specific engagement having to do with one specific work stream processes for an area that is one of our largest expenses?
Oh, that would be called an agreed upon procedures engagement, and that would the cost to do that would depend upon the number of transactions we'd look at and possibly some other things as well. So I have no way of knowing, and it has no relationship directly at all with an expression on the financial statements as a whole. So this would be outside the annual review or audit that you have done. That answer your question?
She probably wants just a roundabout amount. Am I, I'm not sure, but
I couldn't say whatsoever. I have no, it's based on the number of transactions, over how long a period of time, the availability of records. It's just, it's too difficult to pinpoint without having a general idea on the scope of the engagement. I'm sorry, couldn't be more specific. And it's based on if we estimate it to take 50 hours, then based upon hourly rates and who performs the work and so forth. That's probably how we come up with an amount fee.
I understand that, but I would guess that if you can estimate 6 to 10,000 or whatever it was you said earlier, 4 to 6,000, that you
I couldn't have
might
any
be able to
idea.
do a general estimate based on an HOA that has 590 homes and your expectation of the size of.
As I said, it depends on the number of transactions. And as an example, if you were concerned about, and I think I'm pretty sure this happens with the with the SMUD, if I got that right, Sacramento Municipal Utility District. There might be each month there could be 100 invoices. So if you're looking, maybe overstating that, maybe there's 50 invoices. So if you're looking for a year, that's 600 invoices, and that's a lot of transactions to go through. And if you did it for 3 years, then 1,800. That's just a lot of transactions. So I have no way I couldn't really say, what the costs could be, because they don't know the vendor and how many transactions and what time period. Sorry, I can't be more specific unless if you can help define the scope, then I can give you a better idea.
well, what, can we move on to Peter now?
Thank you. Can you hear me all right?
Yes, sir.
Beautifully.
Can you hear me all right, Susan?
Yes, perfectly.
Thank you. My original question is, what would we get for $4,000 to $6,000? And following up on Carol's, if we gave you a request to review our payment receipt of billings and payment and so on process for the purposes of determining if there was a better or more efficient way of doing that, what would something like that cost?
All right, the first question is, what are you going to get for 4,000 to 6,000? And it's going to look almost identical to what you're currently getting for 2,000,
Okay.
except the report is going to be an audit report, an audit opinion instead of a review opinion. Other than that, it's identical.
Okay, then
The second part is that I'd have to give it some thought as to we need to define the scope very clearly.
well,
Before we,
let me indicate that
Mhm.
one of the concerns that I've had and that I've expressed, and in the process of calling for an audit, and incidentally, our bylaws do use the word audit, although it's been interpreted to be review. But in any case, the concern is that we are not getting the homeowners are not getting a true picture of what's occurring through First Services in terms of where the billings go, how they go, where they come out. Is that all, that process? And the thought was that if it was reviewed or audited, however, it might be improved to be both more efficient and clearer for understanding of the homeowners. If that were your directions, can you give me any idea what something like that might cost us?
may I ask, I'm not trying to be flip, but what concern is that as the homeowners? That's the board to decide how the association is to be managed. So I mean, it's good that you're concerned, but it's kind of the ballywick of the board.
You're quite correct, that it is their obligation, but as a homeowner who pays close to $600 a month,
Mhm.
what's going on, and is uncomfortable with some of some of that is expended. Some homeowners, myself included, have been
Mhm.
concerned and have called for what we thought would be an audit. I hear
Mhm.
what
Mhm.
you're telling us now, understand it. But I guess I was trying to give you some thoughts about what our concerns were,
That's it.
or the board felt similarly, what that might cost. Because one of the questions we get repeatedly
Mhm.
raise the question, well, let's have an audit. They say, well, it's going to cost too much money. But nobody seems to know how much it's going to cost, and you can't give us much help there either.
Well, it's because, we used the word audit again, and it wasn't, we already talked about the audit. Now
Right.
you're asking about what we call an agreed upon procedures engagement. And as
That's what I'm asking.
I'm sorry, I think I have to split hairs about it, but there's the difference. Two different entirely engagements. So
I'm very happy to accept your concept, whatever you want to call it.
we
Okay,
called it an agreed upon procedures.
gotcha. Agreed upon procedures. So
Yes, so they decided that, yeah, so that is it would base. I couldn't say it. I think just as a very rough estimate, no more than $5,000 at the very most, probably less. And I know this is getting recorded, so I'm locked in no matter what.
No,
But,
you're not locked in. So we understand it's just a guesstimate.
we
Very
would,
much.
And based on
Thank
really
you.
no information, because everybody is sort of dancing around the issue and, not
Mhm.
wanting to name names. And, quite frankly, I think there is some split among homeowners in whether they think that there's something nefarious going on or just, procedures that needed to be tightened up and tracked in order to get better controls on expenses.
They think expenses are too high. Their assessments are too high. And I think somebody did, it was an excellent chart that somebody did of yours, comparing your assessments versus maybe it's been 10 or 12 other local associations and why yours are different than the others. That was very good. Very informative.
Susan, thank you. That explanation you gave was very good. I'm not trying to fight about the expenses. I would only be interested in making sure that the money we spent is spent appropriately. And I think you stated that would be the purpose of the procedures review, not to necessarily reduce our expenses, just to make sure that we're spending our money the way we should and not wasting it.
Okay.
Thank you, Peter. Thank you for that.
Susan, for giving me all this time. Appreciate it very much.
Sure. Will?
Yes, I have a question, except I have a phone ringing in the background, so let it stop. It's some spam call that's bothering. One more ring and I think it'll be gone. Okay. Assuming that Nepenthe engaged you for the specific procedures agreement to look at expenditures. Now, very briefly, the existing procedure is, the board, other than certain exceptions for which the board is allowed to manage, but basically the board votes an authorization for an expenditure, approves an authorization for expenditure. The first service, it has to be signed off by 2 board members. First, the invoice comes in, it's processed by First Service down in Orange County or wherever they are.
All right. Yeah.
and can't, and two board members have to sign off before it's paid. What is it you would look at in that process? I mean, what is it you would tell us about that process
Mhm.
that we currently don't know? That's what I want.
That's what I hear. What you're telling me is, I don't know what more I can tell you, I mean, what you're doing currently is state of the art.
In other words, I mean, what you would look for, assuming it weren't appropriate, would be that the board authorized a particular expenditure. The money was spent, but it wasn't, it was, the money, the services delivered didn't line up with what the board authorized.
If you
Or
look
the
at,
invoice was for more than the board authorized, or what is it you would,
no. That's it. There's not a lot. I mean, this is the process, the way you have it, where the invoices are scanned. Correct me if I'm wrong, I think the invoices are scanned, and there's protocols about approving an invoice so that it gets paid. And so it's board members sign in, they're all can look at the invoice. It requires two approvals, am I right? And then
yes.
it once approved, it goes out and it's paid. I mean, that's a process for paying bills, which, and you can't find what the fault. There isn't fault here, unless you could look into the protocol itself, where and I could just imagine some board member could sign some other board member's approval, possibly, and then it goes
Somebody
out for,
forged the signatures.
you
So
know.
there are two issues here. Number one, should the board have appropriated this much money to do this function? Which is not something you would
No,
normally be looking at, right?
no,
And then
no.
secondly, once they authorize that expenditure,
Yeah.
was the money spent for what they appropriated the money for, and was the proper amount expended? That's what you would look at.
Yes, that's what we do in an audit. We're going to look at the paid bill and the canceled check. We don't look at every transaction because.
You sample.
Correct. Yes.
Okay.
So an audit at the year-end financials would accomplish, just we discussed, we would look at a sample of the paid bills to see if in fact the actual payment in the general ledger agreed with the invoice, and we would look at the canceled check or whatever, however the payment's made, to see that if we can find the payee on the check agrees with the invoice. That's what's entailed with the sampling.
Thank you.
Carol, you have a question?
Thank you.
Oh, Carol, if you're speaking, we can't hear you right now.
Bill, it seems like you're
There you go.
looking a lot at the end of the process. What if there's evidence that the two authorized signatures on a work order for the work to be done were not done
We have no way of knowing whether the work
in
was done or
multiple
not.
instances?
Well,
The case,
we would
tie up our processes to the
the audio part cuts in and out the moment I don't hear you.
Yeah, I don't get it either.
Yeah, you're saying that your examination would not include, was the product that was purchased actually the
Was the
appropriate
work
product?
performed? It was the work performed. We have no way of knowing.
Or, yeah, so.
That's why we look to
Okay,
the
thank you.
approvals.
I'll try again. what if there are processes from the beginning of a situation at the work order authorization point, and perhaps in order for a work order to take place, that happens, wouldn't we want to know that could be suggested, or that?
I think, and Carol, I'm sorry, you just keep cutting in and out. It's really frustrating. But I think if I can just guess what she's talking about was,
Sure.
for a while, the GM had the power to authorize certain levels of expenditure just for work to take place. And did that part without board sign off. But then when it came to invoicing and payment, the board members, 2 board members signed the REAs. So I think, that was a problem, and we changed that a couple of months later, but it caused a big to do at the time. It was, really, it was at a time, I think, when the board was changing over, and it was kind of a mess. Did you want to add to that? Because I know that, you have some feelings about that, and maybe your internet is better than Carol's.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yes. I'd like to try and clarify this a bit. I think the question is, the management had authorization to write work orders for 2,500 and wrote work orders for 2,800, and the board was not in session at the time and didn't approve the 2,800 work orders until after all the work was paid, and then it went in and was paid. Then the money was signed off by the board to be paid because the work was done. So I think the question is, there's been some upfront processes that have been, I want to say, kind of sloppy bookkeeping, because nobody ever tracked the work orders. Those are being tracked now. So there's been some improvement, but nobody ever tracked the work orders, and all these $2,500 work orders are being written, and nobody knows that they're kind of being written, and it clogs up the finances. And then the $2,800 were written and no one had approved it. And so that is where I think the beef had come in originally. So we'd like to see if an audit would cover the work order process to the processes behind all the work orders, as well as the processes up until they were approved to be paid. That's where the hitch seems to be, at least in my perspective.
That would be an agreed upon procedures engagement. That would not be a financial audit.
Okay. So agreed upon procedures engagement, what is
that? Well, first we define the scope, meaning that, let's just say, it sounds like in this example here, that we would look at, you say, if it's work orders under a certain amount, well, to verify whether the work is done is not possible. I mean, I
understand that. The work was done. I don't think anybody's quibbling about that.
It was just, I think that the work was authorized not by the grounds committee, not by the board, but by the GM. And like I said, it was, not throwing the GM under the bus, because it was a tricky time, but they were procedures that they, didn't show a lot of strength and control. And I'm not sure when, Andy may know exactly when those procedures were stopped. When I think, when things started to heat up, Betsy pretty quickly did not want to have anything to do with approving work, and they were proposals for work.
guess that's a dilemma. On the one hand, you want to, the board, your point is to manage, not to delegate, and not to be involved in day-to-day anything. Oh, I mean, so you have to delegate to the general manager. And yet here it is, you're looking at all the invoices, which is, that's asking a lot. It's a large association, and there's lots of transactions to look at.
Well, work orders were written over the amount that was allotted by the manager. She didn't have approval to do this. And I know it wasn't approved ahead of time because I went back and listened to all the meetings. So I'm just, and I understand there was a transition in board, but it was still done.
Well, did the board subsequently, I'm asked, did they approve the work, or?
You have to approve the work when it's all done.
Yeah, they approved payment for the work. Yeah. So it's just that, I mean, I think probably what's missing is just acknowledgement or something that these were sloppy procedures, and so we need to change them. Because I think, like Nina is saying, the work was done. Yes, they were paid appropriately. There was no, hint of anything going wrong. It was just that, these work orders were a lot to approve all at once. But I guess, from my point of view, if we have corrected the sloppy procedures, then I'm not really sure, except for to put it somewhere like, let's not do this again. I'm not sure what it gains to go back and look at the invoicing and the payments and say, see, we told you, you did this, and there you go.
Well, Susan, to clarify what they would do on a specific procedures, let me just use this hypothetical. Let's say there were 25, I don't know, I have no idea how many there were, but let's say there were 25 instances of the general manager approving expenditures under her authority. And you went in and looked at those, and what would you come back with? That we looked at them, and of the 25, 23 were under $2,500, and and 2 were over $2,500. So those procedures weren't followed in 2 instances. I mean, would more than that come back, or what? Because you're
There
looking
were
at
43 that were not. 43 were over $2,500.
well, whatever.
And this
whatever
isn't
number.
really about, see, we told you so. This is more about having good procedures and good controls in place.
I totally agree with you, Nina. But I mean, do you think, looking now that we've corrected it so that the GM can't authorize anything, that we're in a better position? Because it seems to me that
That's never been communicated, Susan. Nobody's ever said the GM has any authorization. No one's ever said that.
Can I interrupt here for a second, please? This is Christina George.
Sure,
Can I-
Christina, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm the chair of the Grounds Committee. I just want to comment on the fact that, yes, indeed, during the 6 weeks when we didn't have a committee, Betsy did get permission from the board to improve landscaping deficiencies, which she went ahead and did. The board actually did send out a note afterwards saying, yes, they had authorized her to spend $2,500, but they explained why the $2,800 was approved. We did stop that procedure. That process was stopped as soon as the committee came on board, was established, and I was appointed as the grounds chair. We did explain that. And so as of July 2022, the general manager no longer spent the $2,800. The board accepted the fact that, yes, They might have erred in that they didn't have the processes in place. And so moving on, as of July 2022, the work orders for $2,800 that was authorized by the board for the GM to improve landscape deficiencies stopped, and all the work was then approved by the grants committee. So this started in July 2022. So I think we should really just move on now from this. We're in coming into April, end of April 2023. There has been no issues since then. So that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thanks, Christina. Nina, does that solve some of your problem? Because
Well, it'd
it's
be really
really
nice to know who the directors are that approved it retroactively, because no one's ever said that. So great to have the signatures on the upfront stuff. Excuse me, Christina, I'm talking.
No, I understand.
And I just feel like there isn't really clean processes still today, and nobody really understands them. And now all the things are proposals and going behind the ground committee and going directly to directors in an executive session and not being talked about in the open. So it seems like we still have procedure problems. That's what I care about, is the procedure problems. Okay.
Thank you, Nina. Peter? And I'm sorry, go ahead. So sorry, Peter, go ahead.
We're wasting a lot of time talking about things in the past, and I would agree that that was a mistake and it was corrected. I'm concerned that there are probably some other procedures out there that we've not looked at, and that would be my interest, and that is a review of all these kinds of procedures with regard to the work orders, how they're done, who signs them, where they go, so on and so forth. And someone who's a professional, who is aware of how other associations do this kind of thing, might give us some advice and help and make sure that the kind of thing that occurred doesn't reoccur. That pretty, again, this is water under the dam or under the bridge, whatever. It's been corrected, that particular problem. My concern is there probably likely are some other procedures that we could do better with, that we wouldn't get into this kind of a situation again. That's, I think, the point. I think we can hash this stuff over and over, but I don't think it's worth the words.
Do you have any comment on that, Bill? It's hard to, the procedures seem pretty straightforward to me, but you have a lot more.
Well, I think that's it hard to comment. It's what's everyone comfortable with, and if some would say if it ain't broke, let's not fix it. So if you believe that it's working, and then fine. If you'd like to engage us to do a study, we could do that. But if it's an opinion, whether you're going to find something that you think is going to be an improvement meaning that it saves money, or it results in money not being spent unnecessarily. Otherwise, we could tell you what it could take you it might be something that could take you 5 minutes less time to do. That could be another result of this kind of engagement.
Can I'll just make a brief comment.
Sure.
So in case all of you don't know who I am, my name is Andy Helms. I'm the Vice President with First Service Residential for the Sacramento region. And I've been acting as the interim GM since Betsy's departure. And so what I can tell you is, just from my observation, Nepenthe has a lot of moving parts. And I've talked to a lot of residents, committee members, board members, employees, vendors. And what I can tell you is that I see that everyone has great intentions. Were there times that a process may not have been followed and it hasn't been perfect? Probably. It happens at every single association. But when those things are discovered, they're typically brought before to say, hey, we need to look at this. And so we are looking at processes and procedures. Betsy has now left Nepenthe, and we have a new general manager that is going to be starting. Her first day will be on site tomorrow. She has a huge learning curve. Again, your expenses for landscaping are there's a lot to it. And so we will be learning your financials, learning your reserves, learning your review with Bill and what those things look like, doing a training with our regional controller, understanding those processes and procedures. So what I hear people saying is that, you know, something may have happened. I don't know. I don't really think that you should really spend a lot of time on that. And I think that we should focus on what that process is going to look like with the new general manager, with me kind of guiding her through that process, along with the finance committee and the landscape committee and the grounds committee and, you know, all the other committees we will partner with. So I think that that the future is very promising. And again, everyone wants the same thing. And there isn't anyone that I've really seen that doesn't want the same goal or desire or end result for Nepenthe. So just know that as the management company, we do look at those processes and procedures, and we'll be looking at the expenses and the revenue and working with corporate and providing samplings of those for Bill and his CPA firm when he asks for those, like he was saying, the invoice, the canceled check, you know, he does a sampling of all those processes. He does a lot of audits, or I should say a lot of reviews for First Service Residential. He knows how we work. He knows our systems. He knows what accounting principles we have in place. And so I can assure you that, again, we all want the same thing for Nepenthe. So it'd be nice if we could just kind of start and move forward and focus on, you know, where we're heading, especially on this committee.
Thank you, Andy. And I think everybody shares your hope for a very nice future and easy training. Marcus, you had your hand raised?
Yes, thank you. Well, thank you, Andy, for this clear information, for the clarification. And Bill, extremely good information for us. I'm the current president of the association.
Congratulations.
Thank you. And I really liked your statement that you made that we have a state-of-the-art system in place. That's what you said.
Correct. That's right.
So, and I do believe so too, actually. I believe what I keep hearing, and not just here, also over and over again in the past, we do have a few committee members who are, I think, a little confused what their tasks or jobs are per their charter of the committee, and they are mixing up finances with tasks, which we have a finance committee who needs to worry about the money plus the board. And I do believe we have an excellent finance committee, and our board members do review everything that goes through the office. And obviously we have at least 2 directors always signing everything, plus, I do believe also that First Service has excellent people and an excellent system in place to review everything multiple times. So I really think you made us, you gave a good explanation, a good description of everything. And, I'll leave it to that, but, whatever the finance committee will recommend, Susan, please recommend to us what you guys' thoughts are, and we will evaluate it from there. So thank you, everyone.
Thanks, Marcus. Anybody have any other questions? Any finance committee members have any other questions, thoughts? Anything they want to ask Bill?
I think we've beaten this horse to death.
Yeah. I sure appreciate you coming and yeah, it's really
Well, couldn't turn Betsy down here.
yeah.
Yeah. I mean, nobody, I'll have to bring it up again, that nobody gave me what their thoughts on how much an audit would cost. Just, I mean, because sometimes I hear that frequently, and then I don't know where everyone gets their ideas about how much an audit costs, but as I said,
25 bucks an hour, would you do it?
I don't have enough hours in a year.
Okay.
I guess I was thinking I can go out on a limb because, whatever, I don't know anything anyway. But I would think like $10,000 for an audit, and then maybe forensic audit a lot more.
Yeah, I would guess some of the Aubrey says I guess 2,000 to 6,000, but I audit before for small businesses. Yeah, that's just I mean, well, that's because they've done this kind of work. It's sometimes there's a misconception out in the general membership about how expensive this would be and so forth, and everybody worries about that. But then again, to say it's not my money, I'm not the one. It's not coming out of my assessment. So you're, by the way, that I just slightly off topic. Your percent funded is excellent. And it's very good. I think you're putting a lot of money in reserves, and your percent funded compared with other associations your size, you're much better than them.
Oh, that's nice to hear. We don't usually get information about how well funded other HOAs are. That's kind of hard to get.
Well, I think Bob Brown would be happy to share that with you.
Oh, yeah.
Of course, he'd tell you. And particularly the age of your association. I mean, you just had your 50th anniversary. I had to check, not last year. So lots of things that never made it into the reserve study because their useful life was so long, now end up in the reserve study. These are the real expensive things that like underground this and in the walls that and so forth. So, but unless there was questions, I'm happy to answer them.
I think we're good.
Yeah, I think so too. So thank you very much, and have a good evening.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you. And I think if I recall, Betsy, I told her this, as much as I like you, this is also an hourly engagement. So luckily,
Yeah. So sign off quick.
Go away.
I'm not $25 an hour. Then again, it's $240 an hour. Anyway, if you want to talk about that, be happy to talk about it.
Not at $240 an hour.
Yeah, no, I get it.
Okay, let's sign off quick before it charges more.
Yeah,
okay?
before it raised the inflation. Then, thank you much. Then, if we're done, I could be dismissed?
Yes, you can. Thank you.
Okay.
so much.
So,
Adios.
thank you, Susan. Thank you all. Thank you very much. Bye.
Okay, team. I guess, I mean, it's 5:40 and we've been talking a lot about heavy duty things. Is the way clear before us? Do we know what we want to recommend to the board, or do you want to have time to think about what you've just heard and come back next month and make a decision?
I don't see what we gain. I mean, it costs roughly 3 times as much. I don't see what we gain from shifting to an audit based upon, I mean, that was why we went with reviews in the first place, was because you didn't pick up much benefit for roughly 2.5 to 3 times the money. So I don't know, what the point of shifting to an audit is.
I think yeah, I mean, I don't either, but I think what that means is that we'll have to change the bylaws, right?
Well, the interpretation, I mean, council's given us the interpretation that meets the standard. I don't know. It is my area of expertise, and whether,
So
HOA law, so and it might have some public relations benefit for the, for the membership, but in terms of actually delivering anything to us that anybody seems to be seeking, I don't see what it is.
Tara, what's your thought? And Aubrey, but
So my understanding is it could not be done for 23. The concerns that have come forward are retrospective in nature. And based on Andy's communication on a go forward basis, I'm not sure that it would yield having an audit for the calendar year 23, but I'm kind of the mindset is if it would provide some satisfaction to individuals to look at those items in calendar 23, go for it. I would be against a special engagement because I don't think that there's a cost benefit involved, and I don't think that it would be worth it.
I would agree with that. I don't think that the potential benefit that could be gained based on, what we heard from the accountant is worth the cost that he estimated. So I would recommend no. And I think, potentially the board might want to discuss that further, but I would agree with Tara and Will.
Yeah. Ultimately, it's the board's choice, but I don't see any reason to recommend.
Yep.
so it sounds like because I agree with you too. It sounds like we're all in agreement. Does somebody want to make a motion and we'll just make it so?
I'll move that we, after consultation with the accountant, it's the opinion of the board, or it's the opinion of the committee, that the review essentially serves exactly the same purpose and provides the same benefit we would obtain from an audit, or less expenditure, but ultimately it's the board's decision.
Well, since they probably know that last bit, shall we just say that the review provides the same content as an audit, so that we should continue the practice of
Well, that, I think we can just say that it doesn't provide any
Okay,
discernible benefit over and above an audit. How about that? And they can, you know, they know what the cost is. I mean,
doesn't provide. Okay. So I'm going to say that after consultation with the accountant, it's opinion of the committee that an audit does not provide any discernible benefit over a review.
that's what I would,
Okay,
that's my
wouldn't-
motion.
Can I please ask you to remove the word any?
okay,
Is there maybe-
Significant, how about significant?
okay, significant. So an audit does not provide a significant benefit over a review.
All right,
Hmm.
I'll take it as a friendly amendment.
All in favor? Or do I have a second?
Second,
Okay. All in favor?
All right,
aye.
Aye.
So moved. All right, very quickly, Andy, do you want to, do you want to just speak to the financials? Just, you can just, you know, tell us what the real word is in.
Reviewing your financials, and I apologize ahead of time. I haven't had an opportunity to really dive into your financials, but just reviewing them, I don't see anything that is a huge red flag or standing out. And as I mentioned earlier, the new GM, Dusty is her name. She will be on site tomorrow, and her and I will be going through these line by line, as well as all the other tools and trackers you have in place. We'll have an in-depth training with the regional controller to kind of go over those, but I didn't see anything that was abnormal or unusual. So if anybody has any specific questions, I'm happy to take those, and if I can answer them, I will. If not, I will certainly get back to you and give you an answer.
Anybody have any questions?
I don't have a question, but I know Marcus knows as well. Just to keep you up to pace, the siding project is consistently running well ahead of estimates.
Okay,
And they've now started on the evaluation of the next section. Hopefully, we will have a better estimate of cost there, but it's going to be higher than this year's. It's pretty clear. The fact that we went out the extra 2 years may explain some a great deal of that. I don't know.
Thanks, Will. Anything else?
any other? Yeah.
Well, if there's nothing else, then I'm going to, oh, well, actually, I just want to check in with the next meeting, May 22nd. Is that good for everybody?
Yeah, I do have a question for the other members of the board. If they've looked at this modified reserve tracker. Has anybody looked at it yet?
The version that Andy sent out just recently?
The one that Mary distributed?
I'm going to suggest that we not, I mean, she just distributed it to us, not the board. And I think we need to talk about it. I have.
Yeah, we do. I would just like to direct a question about it. You know, historically, we always come up with this figure of the financials use this figure of what the end point of last year was, were you over or under in a particular area, which has virtually no meaning in the case of the reserves.
Right.
And so utilizing that as the starting point for tracking the reserves, speaking from a lot of experience on the board, seems to me not to be a useful number at all. What the base number should be the projected cost for this given year, and then everything should be built off that.
Yeah, the allocations that are in there. I don't know
Yeah.
where the numbers that she has in there came from.
I know where they came from, but and they're in the financials, but they're not what the board normally tracks. in my
They're just
opinion.
not related to the numbers in the reserve at all, the reserve allocations. So
No, they're not the allocations. It's the closing, it's the beginning, it's the end point of the last fiscal year and the beginning point of this fiscal.
So anyway, let's just put a pin in that and talk about it in the next meeting. We can talk, and it'll be a better time too with the new GM.
Yeah, I just wanted to direct people's attention at it, not essentially discuss.
Yeah. Does that sound good to everybody? Okay. So May 22nd, does that look good for everyone? Okay, all right. Well, thanks everyone for your presence, your contribution. Peter, do you have one last? I'm just about to say adjourn, so it better be good, buddy.
Very short. I just want to thank you for permitting all the participation by us non-committee members in this particular discussion. Thank you very much.
Oh, thank you, Peter. Okay, all right. Have a good evening, everybody.
Thank you.